On today's episode of What's Going On with Shipping, after 13 years, the crews on board the Staten Island ferries are getting themselves a pay raise. I'm your host, Sal Mercogliano. So not the biggest shipping story in the world, a pay raise for those on board the Staten Island ferry, but I think one of really interest that should go on. We've talked a lot about ferries on this channel, P&O ferries over in England, but here's a story. 13 years they have been negotiating a pay raise since 2010 with the Staten Island ferries and the city of New York. They finally brokered that deal, and what a deal. We're going to go in and break this down for you. If you're new to the channel, hey, take a moment, subscribe to the channel and hit the bell so you'll be alerted about new videos as they come in. All right, let's go afloat with the Staten Island ferry. All right, believe it or not, this is not our first time bringing the Staten Island ferry up on what's going on with shipping. We talked about it once before where the crew from SNL, Saturday Night Live, actually bought themselves a used Staten Island ferry to convert into a nightclub. Can I be clear what a disastrous idea that was? But the story that's getting the attention today is this one right here. Staten Island ferry crews ride high seas in a new deal. Mayor Adams of the city of New York, I don't know how these guys made it 13 years without an increase in salary. We were paying them for the sacrifices, and paying them they are. We're going to talk about that here. Here it is in the New York Post. Leave it to the New York Post to get the great one. Ferry Godfather, mayor pays deal, gives SI captains $1 million in back pay and raises. Yes, that is true. And then over on StatenIslandLive.com, which I'm sure everybody subscribes to, Staten Island Ferry Unions Inc. long-awaited contract with New York City marking first wage increase in 13 years. Let's go over to G Captain Mike Scholler's story here, which really encapsulates what we're talking about. So after 13 years, the Marine Engineers Beneficial Association and the City of New York, this is MEBA, this is a big shipping union in the United States. Now understand, deep sea shipping with the United States is unionized, but there are multiple unions. You have MEBA, you have MMP, SIU, you name it. There's a slew of these unions out there. Matter of fact, one of the big problems is that many ships have multiple unions on board. But this story talks about how they have finalized this agreement. MEBA represents all 5 officer titles at the Staten Island Ferry: captain, chief engineer, marine engineer, assistant captain, and mate, who have been without a contract since the previous one expired back in November of 2010. The Staten Island Ferry has increased the pay of its officers to match other ferry operations around the country, making it the highest paying public ferry system in the U.S. This move aims to recognize the skills and expertise of the officers, provide fair compensation, and address recruitment at the retention issues. So there was actually a court case that was held about this, with the argument being that because the ferries are so large, and these are massive ferries, you have to get out of your mind the idea of a small ferry. These are big, huge, massive, almost seagoing vessels in terms of tonnage, that they should be considered basically the same as deep draft ocean-going vessels. You also have the Seafarers International Union, SIU, which represents the unlicensed, also getting a deal. So this agreement includes a retroactive payment. This is probably the most contentious, issue here. Understand that the base wage they were getting prior to this for the master, and the master is the captain of a vessel, was about $70,000. And while $70,000 could be a lot in many parts of the country, in New York City, it's not. It's not. It's good money, but it's not enough to really sustain yourself. And so the argument was that they wanted to get more. This agreement dates back to the 13-year negotiation, and also with the agreement that was reached in August of 2022. The union also secured large increases for deck titles not included in the prevailing wage determination, including retroactive payment back to 2010. The contract also established new salary rates, a 40-hour work week, which was a big thing. Prior to this, they were working more than 40 hours, and a 5-step salary schedule for MEBA employees hired or promoted after October 1st, 2023. MEBA represented employees will be allowed to take vacation in 1-week blocks for greater flexibility. Prior to this, they were not. It was a big problem. The contract was put out to the bargaining unit for a ratification vote last week and passed easily, with over 97% casting a ballot and almost 94% voting to accept it. Okay, I have to ask a question here. Who is the 6% that didn't vote for this agreement? Because I got to say, if you're a master or an upper officer on this vessel, you're getting $1 million in back pay. What percentage of that 6% sat there? No, I think it went like this. Take the 6%. 0.01% of the people who voted no against this sat there and said, that's a lot of money. Maybe we're taking too much money. The other 5.99% sat there and said, damn, we're getting a lot of money from the city of New York. Maybe we should hold out for more. I think that's where that one went. I don't know who made up that 6%. I'm really dying to know that. It goes back to MEBA's Secretary Treasurer, Roland Rexa, who I've actually met, Roland. I'm immensely proud of my membership for speaking up and refusing to accept anything less than what they deserve. They understand their value, they excel at their jobs, and they refuse to settle for mediocrity. Mayor Adams, today we thank our tireless ferry workers, not just with words, but with a contract that delivers the fair wages and benefits they deserve. The new contract is set to expire on January 4th of 2027. Staten Island Ferry has been doing quite a lot going on. They've just replaced their ferries. 3 brand new ferries just came into service. Dorothea Day here in 2021, the Sandy Ground, and then the Staff Sergeant Michael Olis. 3 brand new ferries, state of the art, built down in Eastern Shipbuilding in outside of Pensacola in Florida, Panama City, excuse me, in Florida. So really state of the art type ferries. This has been an ongoing argument for a long time. I am happy that everyone negotiated and got what they wanted. I do have a question about the backpack. That is a lot. It's going to be hard for some people to swallow. And I'm not against everyone getting what they deserve. That's going to be one that causes this kind of backlash, I think, in some ways against this. I think it should have been a gradual step up, maybe perhaps, to be more equitable across time. I do think that the ferry crews were screwed by the city of New York for 13 years. They deserve this at that time. It's just, I also know how this is going to be viewed outside. It's going to create a bit of a problem, I think. You have groups around the world who argue that we should get rid of American mariners because they cost way too much. If you look over, I just talked about this on What the Ship, the story over on P&O ferries, where they're paying their crews £6 an hour in England to operate because they got rid of the English crews and they replaced them with Indian crews. Let's be clear, this can happen on the Staten Island Ferry. If you get rid of the Jones Act, for example, you can flag those vessels overseas, even though they're operating between Staten Island and Manhattan or Brooklyn. And you can all of a sudden have the issue come up where you're replacing the crews on board with foreign crews and getting paid either the minimum wage for international shipping or at the very least minimum wage to operate in the United States. And that would just, it would cause chaos. It really would in many ways, because then you're replacing U.S. jobs and Americans with foreign crews operating in and around the city of New York. And I think that would be a huge detriment. I think it's a problem that doesn't get talked about when people talk about repealing the Jones Act, that the idea that ferry operation could be impacted by this. We saw it with P&O over in England. I hope you enjoyed today's video. If you did, hey, take a moment, subscribe to the channel and hit the bell so you'll be alerted about new videos as they come out. Leave a comment, share it across social media. I'm sure I'll have some comments. But I think I'm going to hear a comment from the 5.99% of people who voted against that and wanted more money. Leave a comment, give it a thumbs up, and if you can, support the page. How can you do that? Well, if you are a Staten Island ferry captain, you can share some of the wealth of that $1 million with me. You can go ahead and hit the super thanks button down below or head on over to Patreon and become a monthly or yearly patron of the page. I'm looking for a big plus up in my Staten Island Ferry membership. I'm not sure it's going to happen. But until the next video, this is Sal signing off.